Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is 10:06 Thursday morning, May 14th. Hope everyone's doing good. Sort of a nice day again. We've had just cloudy, dismal weather for a while, but it is what it is. But temperatures have been nice, so hope everyone's doing good. So, yeah, as far as plans this weekend, coming up tomorrow's Friday, we got a quantum show coming up on Saturday at about 1:30. We're going to be starting. We're going to be playing quantum. We'll be playing at the world famous Opera House Video. We're going to be playing with my great friend Ronnie, aka Enor, aka Sonic Wallpaper. Really great, super incredibly talented musician. Gotten to play with Ronnie a lot over the years, so over the last few years, really. Not a long, just within the last 3 years or so. We started playing together about 3 years ago or so in the band called Bone Broth. Might have even been. It might actually be a little bit longer than that. He, I met him through that band, and we played in Bone Broth together for about 3 years, and that was just kind of an amazing experience. He's an amazing guitar player. That band was pretty unique because it was all, improvised. We would play lots of. At one point, we were playing lots of gigs together, and that's also how I met my great friend Halsey. He has an electronic group as well, Halsey, and we played a lot of gigs together with Bone Broth. And Ronnie is just a phenomenal guitar player, really great friend. He also has a local band that he plays in a lot called Oov, which is a really great prog rock metal band. Really great band. One of the better bands in the state. And but and since Bone Broth kind of broke up a while ago now, and we kind of kept it together a little bit afterwards, where we have this kind of new, if you want to call it, incarnation of that band, Space Junk, which is just now a trio, or has been a trio with just me, Ronnie, and Halsey, and we just do kind of these improvised sets. We've only played a few gigs. We don't play regularly or anything, but we continued on after the band Bone Broth kind of broke up, and we played a handful of shows. We played at Hey Sailor once. We played at the Lobster Festival once or twice, and then we did a show at on Halloween. That was the last show we played. Was on Halloween at Symington Corner. So we're not like a an active band very much, but it's really fun when we get together. But since Bone Broth broke up, most of the time that we've played together has been with our electronic groups. With Ronnie having his group, which is a solo project, and Sonic Wallpaper, and it's really cool stuff. It's like real interesting, definitely electronic stuff, but he incorporates a lot of different styles, a lot of world music. And he's kind of a freak because he builds a lot of his own instruments, builds his own guitars, does lots of cool looping. It's all improvised kinds of material, but he also has lots of songs that he's written in that style. And then my friend Halsey, who I've played a lot with as well, he does kind of hip hop infused kind of electro stuff, and it's really cool. It's all original music, and so we've played. Ronnie and I have done a lot of shows. Really, when I think about it, he the first electronic kind of show that we did together was about 3 years ago. We had an album release show for In Dreams I Saw, Chapter One, our last kind of double album thing that we did. He opened up for Quantum at that show, and we played on Oak Street in Rockland, and that was super fun. That was the first time we did that, and then we played about 2 or 3 times at Hot Hill Tavern, and that was all of us together, and that was really fabulous. And that was also with Halsey, and then Halsey and I played at Ada's, and then we also played fairly recently we played at Hey Sailor, and then we had another release show about a year ago now, which is crazy. And also, Ronnie was on that bill, and also Halsey. And then we've done Halsey and I are going to be doing another show together this summer at the Boston Belfast Commons. I think it's in late June or July. And then Ronnie and both of our groups have played. This is like, I think this might be our third time playing at Opera's Video. Last time we played there was really great. We played during the Ice Festival, so and there was a good traffic amount of traffic, people walking around and people that came out. So it's just going to be the two of us playing this Saturday at like about 1:30 at Opera House Video, and we're going to do these kind of improvised sets. So really looking forward to that. The other news I'm really really excited about is there's a new movie coming out that I've been talking a lot about, that was directed and written by this really new talented guy on the scene, Corey Barker. He has a new movie that is coming out actually tonight, Thursday, called Obsession. And this is a movie I've been hearing a lot about, probably about a year. And I'm very, very, very excited. This has been the movie I have been the most looking forward. Definitely, the movie I've been the most excited about, looking to see this year, 2026. And my anticipation has been growing for this movie. And it's I'm a little cautious, only because I've heard a lot of hype and a lot of really big things and a lot of fantastic things about this movie. So you kind of, when you kind of hear a lot of real, I think, at least in my mindset, I try, if a movie is coming out that I'm really excited about, or a movie that I'm curious about, if it has a lot of hype around it and all of this stuff, and then, or if it's on the other kind of spectrum of things, of where a movie has a lot of negative kind of hype, and sometimes now, well, not sometimes now, pretty much all the time now, with new movies that come out, sometimes because of the internet, things get so hyped up, or either just so trashed. There's not like this, you know, middle ground of where it's not like so over the top and kind of ridiculous. Um, on the point to the point of selling a movie or to trashing a movie. Things get a little bit too um, built up, I think, sometimes. And I think that can be a detriment sometimes to the movie. But anyway, this movie's been really hyped up. Um, and I kind of think, even though I haven't seen it, I kind of think that this movie could possibly be the best movie of 2026. But there's only one way to find out. I do like Corey Barker quite a bit. He has he's primarily a YouTube guy, and this is his first full length feature. It got picked up by Neon, which is the big company that's distributing Obsession. I came across Corey Barker uh, pretty much, well, earlier this year, actually, or last year I should say. I came across his YouTube channel after hearing actually about Obsession. So actually, I would say it was a year ago. He had made, produced, directed, and wrote these very short little horror films that he put online for free on his YouTube channel, and he also does these kind of comedy skits that are very dark and kind of horror based at times. And I remember watching these two little short films, and these movies are like micro budget, super, I mean, incredibly low budget. But I was really, really impressed with some of these two films, or with these two films that he put out. Incredibly dark, incredibly, well, kind of scary, actually, very intense, a lot of suspense, good acting, really original, unpredictable, really unique, And just the idea that this was, something that, again, some of these two films or so were about 10 or 15 minutes. But I was really impressed. And I'm like, wow, if this guy got the ability to make a movie, that could be really interesting. The thing that I was just really taken aback by by the work of him that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of interviews with Corey Barker, and he's very smart. He's a young guy, but he really has, I don't know, just an amazing kind of work ethic. I was just really impressed with what he had to say in these various interviews. And the thing, a couple of the things that I was the most impressed with watching some of his work was just how much he utilized so little, like having virtually no money to do these projects, and how great they looked, and how the production level still looked great, and the story was really great, and he actually acts in these films as well, and as well as the skits that he does. So he's like multi talented, multifaceted, and does everything. And that was to me really impressive. And that it seemed like his focus was on original content. So I'm trying to make it work, hopefully. But I was a little bit worried that Obsession was, because it's still, I think, considered to be an independent horror film. I was a little bit worried that it wasn't going to be playing locally. And it's not playing locally, which I just found out, or found out a few days ago. But I did see something a while ago that it was playing in Maine. And then so today I looked it up, and it's playing at Black Bear Cinema, which is such an awesome theater, which is in Orono. And so I'm doing my damnedest to make a plan to go see it tomorrow night. It actually opens tonight at Orono, an early show, which is pretty amazing. So I'm super fucking excited. I'm trying to get a little crew of friends to go tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, because this is a movie I've been dying to see. Another big thing that happened with Corey Barker so far recently in his like brand new kind of career is he just got picked by A24 to be the new director of the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that they are going to be doing. Earlier this year, A24 bought the rights to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, which is pretty insane. And it's a surprising move, and it could be interesting. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original especially, and those two remakes and part two, I just think are absolutely amazing. One of the greatest slasher movies ever made, if not the greatest slasher movie ever made. Franchise itself, there's a lot of other movies in the franchise that I think are just, well, garbage. But I'm really into, you know like I obviously I'm a big fan of franchises, of course, but I'm really into new and original. Like I really love directors that go and tackle brand new material, like something new. Like recently, just going to see Hokum, Damian McCarthy's new film, who did Oddity and Caveat. Hokum was awesome. Probably the best horror film I've seen this year. Just awesome. But with Damian McCarthy, he is doing all original content. He writes and directs his own films. Super talented guy. Really, really good. Hokum is an awesome movie. And that's kind of what I gravitate towards, as far as content, new stuff, new material. I like new ideas, new, fresh things. Again, I love remakes or I love franchises, but, I get pretty tired of it sometimes. So I'm kind of like, wow, okay. So anyway, A24 picked Corey Barker to be the director of the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie because not only are they they bought the rights to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a pretty wild thing. But then initially they announced that they were going to be making a television show, which is kind of weird, but could be interesting. But then shortly after they announced that they were A24 was going to be making a movie, a full length feature film that they were going to finance and basically produce. That was going to be a totally new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And then they shortly after that they named Corey Barker as the director. So it was just like, and that's based off of, from what I gather and from what I read, based purely on the film Obsession. So I'm super stoked. The most definitely the most I've been the most excited I've been to go see a movie in a long time. This is definitely Obsession is definitely the movie that I have been anticipating the most for 2026. So fingers crossed it all works out. And yeah, I don't know very much about it. I've been trying to stay completely away from any kind of reviews. There have been reviews are starting to pop up now online about it, and I'm staying away from it. I heard about this movie about a year ago through a YouTube channel that I watch, uh, Cody Leach's channel. He had gone to, I don't know what festival it was, Fantastic Fest or South by Southwest, one of the bigger kind of indie film fests last year, I believe. And usually I watch those shows because that's usually those shows in particular will talk about pretty much all of the new films that are coming out that particular year. And for this show, it was movies that were going to eventually be coming out at some point in 2026. And one of the movies that he talked probably the highest about and praised it, uh, he just really said that this movie was just uh, an experience, was Obsession. And it premiered at this festival, and it was either South by Southwest or Fantastic Fest, or one of the big major festivals, and he had seen it in there, seen it at the festival, and it had not gotten a distribution deal yet, but then it got picked up shortly after by Neon, which is a big company, and it's getting a huge national release for a relatively independent movie or small movie. So pretty wild. But other than that, there are trailers. Um, there are teaser trailers. Actually, I saw when I went to see. It might have been Get Help, or it might have been a recent. It was definitely a recent movie that I saw. They had a teaser trailer for Obsession in the theater, and it looked awesome because you didn't really know. It just looked really creepy and interesting, and you didn't know, like, it didn't give away anything. It just made you, and it was a short kind of teaser trailer. It just made you. It left you with big questions, and I remember just having this feeling after seeing the actual teaser trailer. I was like, man, that looks pretty wild. What the hell is that? I need to see that, and that was my reaction. And that should really be the reaction that you get from a trailer, because too often trailers give away too much shit. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, it will all work out. Anyway, so yesterday I was up in Orono for a doctor's appointment. I had to get my teeth worked on, so I had to go to my orthodontist. And so I got done with that, and I was like, well, it's in Bangor. Bull Moose, my home away from home, is literally 2 minutes away from there. So I was like, fuck it. I was in kind of pain and a little bit of agony during my cleaning, so I was like, I should treat myself to something good. So I went to Bull Moose and I got a a fucking awesome selection of movies. So I was really excited. And the first movie I got, I'm gonna do reviews on all of the new movies I've gotten, and it's been a while. It had been a while since I've been up to Bull Moose, so I don't go as much just because trying to save money because freaking everything is so goddamn expensive. But I was like, fuck it, I can make it work. So I went after my appointment, and I I'm happy to report I struck some serious gold. And I'm happy to report this was a movie which I just think, I just think this movie is a pure masterpiece. And I've been actually wanting to get this on Blu-ray for like the longest time. And I couldn't find, like, I don't know. I I felt like it's weird. I felt like I couldn't find the definitive version of the film, the version of the film that I was looking for. Like one of the movies, I again is a movie that I've been trying to get for the longest time, and I know if I dig a little bit deeper or maybe go online, I can find it. But an example of the same exact thing was is a movie that I've been wanting to get for so long is the Road Warrior, Mel Gibson, the second in the Mad Max franchise, second installment. And I absolutely love that movie. That movie means the world to me. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. That was actually the first Mad Max I'd ever seen, and I only have that on VHS, and I don't think I even had it on DVD. But I've been looking forever to get a really good Blu-ray version of it, and it is available on Blu-ray, but the versions that I've come across are just kind of like I want a DVD or Blu-ray version of that film so bad that where it comes with a lot of great special features, and it's a remastered or restored version of that film, and I have not been able to find that really at all. And I know if I dig a little even deeper or shop online, I could probably find it. But finding that definitive version has, for some reason, been elusive. I've seen it on DVD multiple times, and I have seen it on Blu-ray, but it looks just like a standard transfer. There's no special features, so I don't end up getting it. And another movie that I've been trying for so hard to find, get just a really good definitive version, and I'm happy to report I finally got it. And this movie is one of the greatest movies, one of the greatest movies ever made in the horror science fiction genre. I've seen people say that this movie is perhaps the greatest horror movie ever made, and I have no problem backing that up. And I also think that this movie is probably the best movie of one of the greatest directors of all time, John Carpenter. But I finally got John Carpenter's The Thing on Blu-ray in this absolutely beautiful packaging or edition. Amazing. And I picked this up yesterday. This was the first movie I saw when I was at Bull Moose. It was right there on the shelf. 18 bucks, pretty cheap, and beautiful artwork. It's got a nice little slip cover here, and then you got that underneath. The thing that is amazing is that this is all like restored into like from like like 4K. This is a Blu-ray version, but it's basically scanned like 4K, and there are literally hours and upon hours of special features. It's insane. It's a 2 disc set, and I was like, as soon as I saw this in the store, and I saw that this was for the price that it was for, and that it had, I mean, it's hard to see with the glare, but there's hours. There's documentaries. There's like 4 or 5 documentaries on the thing. There are multiple interviews, and all of the new documentaries and interviews are they're all relatively new. and I've never seen any of them before. So I was just like, there's interviews with all the cast members. I mean, everybody involved with the thing is. There's no, I haven't come across, which is kind of surprising. The only interview, again, I still have a lot more to go as far as the special features because there's at least, I'd say, 3 hours. And I'm watching all of the special features now. I'm like halfway done. But so far, the only thing I don't see as far as special features goes, there's no interview or interviews with Kurt Russell, which is a little bit odd. But everything else, everyone else involved in the thing is there's interviews, and it's amazing. They go in such great detail. There's like some incredible interviews with John Carpenter. I've seen so many interviews with John Carpenter over the years. Again, one of my favorite directors of all time. And and in these interviews, he's talking about a lot of different things, particularly around the thing that I have never really heard of before, and it's really really interesting and a lot of creative interest, creative different viewpoints on the film, and also a lot of info on the locations, how incredibly hard this film was to make. John Carpenter also says and talks about, and I've heard him say this before, but this was, from a technical standpoint, the hardest film he ever made. But he also feels it's probably the best movie he's ever made. Yeah. So, and I have to say, the transfer of the thing on Blu-ray, this particular version, this is a collector's edition, is jaw dropping, completely jaw dropping. I've said it many, 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 many times, but getting a really beautiful edition of a movie that you really love, whether you're discovering it for the first time or whether it's something that you grew up watching, like The Thing. This was a movie of my youth that I've seen this movie, probably a billion times. And I sat down and watched it last night. And this version of The Thing it was like watching it literally for the first time. I mean, it's incredible. The quality is unbelievable. I've never seen it in such high definition, the highest resolution. The soundtrack by Ennio Morricone, just yeah, amazing, amazing. I've always seen, all the times that I had seen the thing was either on VHS. I had seen it on DVD a bunch of times. On cable, it used to be when I grown up. And again, the thing came out in 1982. It's unbelievable how incredibly amazing this film looks. I mean, yeah, where do you start? It's incredible. It's one of the greatest films. The same kind of thing happened for me with John Carpenter too, where I a movie that I've been always wanting to get, but I had multiple versions of on DVD and VHS, but I never got like the definitive version. Was like up until, it was last year, I got this beautiful version of Halloween finally on of Halloween on Blu-ray, like the definitive version. And I don't know why, but it took me so long to find just the right version of it. A movie that has, a beloved movie, a beloved classic, really genre films that are in the genre of horror and science fiction that are just incredibly important and so influential even to this day. I've been wanting to get, Halloween for the longest time, and I finally got that definitive version. It's available everywhere pretty much on DVD or Blu-ray, and you can find it. And there's 4K versions. There's multiple versions of that movie. And with The Thing, there's also multiple versions of it. But I was so excited I finally got the right version. And again, the transfer is absolutely amazing because every time I've ever seen The Thing, a lot of the film, and one of its biggest strengths, is the atmosphere. And a lot of the scenes are shot in the darkness. And I've always felt, with the versions that I've seen, it's almost a little too dark. And of course the cinematography was done by Dean Cundy, who is my favorite cinematographer. He did all of the work, all of the films of John Carpenter. A master master cinematographer. And this was, the third movie, or actually the fourth movie in John Carpenter's career. His first movie, Assault on Precinct 14, and then Halloween, and then The Fog, and then The Thing. And The Thing was really interesting because it was his first big studio film. You know, up to until that point, he was making essentially horror exploitation movies, very very low budget movies. Obviously with Halloween being one of the most important slasher movie ever made. The Fog. I just did a deep dive video recently on The Fog. Uh, Assault on Precinct 13 is just a masterpiece of a film, and this was a big pivotal moment for John Carpenter's career. This was his first big studio film, even though, and it was distributed and financed by Universal Studios, one of the biggest companies in the world, major Hollywood players. But the thing that I love about this movie is it doesn't feel like a big Hollywood movie. I mean, yeah, the production value is unbelievable, but it still feels gritty. It still feels really low budget. And I feel like, in this interview, he was talking a lot, John Carpenter was talking about the team of all of the people that he got to work on this film. And Dean Cundey did all the cinematography for this film and had worked on all of the previous John Carpenter films. And Dean Cundey and his team that he always worked with worked on all kinds of really low budget exploitation movies in the 70s and 80s. And he basically took the exact same team that he had been working with for many years and used them for The Thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why the film still, even though, again, this was 82, so the world was a very different place then, and technology was a very different thing for obvious reasons. But I think that is the key reason why I feel like this movie still has that classic John Carpenter grittiness. Even though technically it's a big studio film, it's still just dirty and gritty, and I still feel like this movie is like still like that real low budget kind of independent, exploitation vibe that his previous other films were, or they still have that same vibe to me. And the thing is, I mean, it's got the greatest. I mean, it definitely has the greatest practical effects ever made, the greatest creature design ever made. The effects were, of course, created by the legendary Rob Bottin, who was only like 22 years old when he did this film, which is completely insane. He had done the work on. He had worked previously. He did the effects for John Carpenter's The Fog before this movie, and he also did the creature effects for me, my favorite werewolf movie of all time, The Howling. He did all the creature effects on that, and just a legend, so ahead of his time. And the way they talk about when they were creatively trying, when John Carpenter was talking about his collaboration or working with Rob Bottin, was this idea of how they decided to go the route of, and this was all in the interview segments on the special features on here. And again, I still have a ways to go, but it's amazing. But he was talking about when they had the concept of how they were going to do this movie, because growing up, John Carpenter, the original, was a Howard Hawks, The Thing, was one of his favorite movies. And then when he got the call to do a big budget film, with Universal Studios, they said, "Well, why don't we do a remake of The Thing?" John Carpenter was talking a lot about this in his interview, where he was like really, really not excited initially about doing a remake of a movie that he really loved, because he wanted to, since this was his like huge big Hollywood break, he wanted to do something, totally fresh and new. And it wasn't until the concept was laid out and they really, decided to go in a very different direction with this film that, that's when he got really excited. Because he was talking about his collaborations with Rob Bottin and the different writers involved with the film. They were talking about how, you know, well, in this term, in this case, the creature design, they were gonna have this essentially this alien creature that acted as like kind of a virus, and that it could take over anyone or anything at will, and also basically try to replicate and become a clone of that particular person, and use that person to do its bidding essentially. And so it opened it up to this idea with the monster, because essentially this is a monster movie, but it opened it up that this monster could take any kind of form. It could go in any, conceivable direction. So it's just like creatively, it was literally like the sky's the limit. This thing could go anywhere. It could take on so many forms. So it was so open ended. And yeah, I think even to this day, as far as monster movies, there's no other monster that exists like this. I think it's one of the most brilliant concepts of a creature design, but one of the most innovative ideas, and one of the most terrifying, really is. And the I've always said practical effects for me are where it's at, and this is probably the work of Rob Bottin. It's probably the biggest and greatest example of that. I mean, without a doubt, without a doubt. And looking at the special features, on some of the special features I haven't gotten to, it is there are interviews with Kurt Russell, so that's pretty cool. Hmm. Bill Lancaster was the writer, one of the writers of the thing, who was the son of Burt Lancaster. And he was also a big component into taking this kind of, well, essentially what started as a remake, but turning it into, a much different, kind of a higher concept science fiction movie. And really, the movie really focuses on the biggest strength of this movie is the sheer darkness of this film, and how this movie is so incredibly fucking dark and bleak, but it just really focuses on how this alien can kind of transfer its power and take over anyone or anything at any given moment to do its bidding. And it just instills this overwhelming sense of paranoia, knowing that that person right next to you could be infected and is the alien. I mean, it's unbelievable. That sense of paranoia in this film is like unlike any other film in, well, film history and science fiction. I'm a mainly a horror guy, of course. Like horror is my favorite genre of film or style. Within the styles of movies. But I'm also, a massive science fiction fan. So, but when you take science fiction and horror and blend it together, to me, it's out of sight. I mean, obviously, Ridley Scott's Alien, primetime example of that, and I think the thing is like kind of the epitome of that, where it's the perfect combination of suspense perfect combination of taking horror and like your kind of traditional creature feature or monster movie and combining that with just incredible science fiction. And it's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I again, this is a movie I've seen so many times I could not give you couldn't I couldn't give you a number on how many times I've actually seen it. I think it's pretty safe to say that this, and again, John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors of all time. But I think it's safe to say The Thing is probably the greatest movie he's ever directed. And I have seen people say, in YouTube people or even critics, when Halloween comes, Halloween season, or maybe when they do a show on their the top 10, their top 20 horror films of all time. A lot of times I see The Thing being named number one as the greatest horror movie ever made, and I am not probably going to disagree with that because it's fucking amazing. Like it's insane. It's insane. And for my history of seeing this film again, I probably saw The Thing the first time when I was a really, really little kid, probably on some late night cable show. Like, because back when I grew up in the 80s, there used to be a few different networks and television networks that would do these kind of horror marathons. Elvira was another one. The Great Svengali was another one. I think that's what his name was. And then there was another series called USA Up All Night. And basically these shows were they'd come on Friday or Saturday night, and they'd be these, and then Joe Bob Briggs, uh, Monster Vision, of course, can't forget him. There was a handful of these different shows that would come on late night on television on a Friday or Saturday night, and they would do these horror marathons, and they would show them the movies late. So I remember there were times too where the movies were not cut, because they weren't shown prime time. They were shown after 10 or 11. And I remember, watching these movie marathons of like all these great horror movies. Like that's how I saw Halloween the first time. It's the first time I saw like House by the Cemetery. The list goes on. And it was definitely that was the first time I ever got a chance to see The Thing. So, and then after that, I remember, VHS came along. VHS was a thing when I was a little kid. And I remember seeing The Thing at such a young age. Maybe I saw it a little too young because it is a fucking scary movie. I think The Thing is legitimately a scary movie. I've talked about that sometimes, where there are movies, in the horror genre that are just really fun and entertaining, and they're spooky. They have a good creepy factor to them, and that kind of thing. It's like being on amusement, going to an amusement park. But then there are other films in horror that are legitimately scary that kind of can give you nightmares. And The Thing was one of those movies. I still feel it, like, even watching it last night, still has those vibes where it's generally creepy and scary. And the atmosphere. Even though I've seen it a billion times, it still has that effect. But I remember seeing it as a kid, and it terrified me. I probably saw it a little too young, but hey, you know. And then after seeing it on cable, I remember seeing it on VHS quite a few times. I remember renting VHS, the thing on VHS many times. And then I don't know, it was probably about 10 years ago. I can't remember where I got it. I got it somewhere. It wasn't Bull Moose. It might have been just like some random place, but I got the thing on DVD, and at the time it was considered to be like, well, it was a collector's edition on DVD of the thing. And at the time that came out, on DVD because the DVD explosion took over, in the late or early 90s, late 80s or so. That took away the whole market for VHS, of course. But it was probably like 10 or 12 years ago or so. I had it for a wicked long time. But I got the thing on DVD, and at the time when it came out, it was like looked at or regarded as like the definitive version of that movie. And it's a collector's it was a collector's edition. It had a bunch of special features on there. It was actually really good. And I had that on DVD for again many years, over 10 years. Can't remember where I got it. And it was probably a year, it was like 2 years ago. I was watching it. I went to go grab it on my shelf and grabbed it. And for some freak accident, the DVD itself cracked. And because it was before it cracked, it was it was really old, and it just wasn't. I don't know. It would skip, and it wouldn't it had problems playing at times. It wasn't really scratched, but it was just not. I don't know. It was breaking down, and then finally, it like literally, it fell apart and it like cracked, and I was like, oh fuck, because there were a lot of good special features on the disc, and it was a pretty good version. It really was a pretty good version. So there was about 2 years or so where I just didn't have the thing, and I would watch it. When I had that version of it, I watched it. All the time, a couple times a year probably. So, but I have to say, buying this version of it blows that version the fuck away in every way possible, in every way, every way you can imagine. So super excited. I can't recommend. I don't know if this was put out by. I think this was put out by Shout Factory, but this is a very popular movie. Um, but I always forget about the trajectory of this film. In an interview, there's a really great interview with John Carpenter. He was talking about kind of the success of his films. Precinct was really popular, a very popular film when it came out. It was his debut, real gritty, exploitation movie. And then, of course, Halloween became a phenomenon. One of the greatest slasher movies of all time. And then The Fog also came out. That was a hugely successful film. And so Universal approached him about doing this bigger project with a major studio. And this movie, I always forget that this movie tanked. It did not connect with an audience. It's crazy because in the interviews too with the cast of the thing, they talk about how there was not even a premiere for this movie. The studio never really promoted this movie enough, and they never really did an official kind of launch or premiere. Crazy, crazy. The reason too was when this movie came out, which was 1982. E.T. was released, I guess, the same weekend. Steven Spielberg's E.T. And that movie was a global phenomenon. That movie just swept everyone up and just blew everything away that was coming out in the movies at that time. And so that took the wind out of the sails, apparently, from what they talk about, or what John Carpenter talks about. That took all of the publicity, all of the hoopla, and everything, and made just an insane amount of money, even in that time of '82. So it left the thing in the dark, literally. And the thing is a very dark movie, and it is not a family movie like E.T. And it kind of tanked. It kind of tanked. It didn't even have a regular premiere. The cast in this film, there's a lot of great interviews with the cast when they were talking about the way they saw the movie, which was crazy. Like they went on their own time to go see it in the theater with like a friend or two, and they were talking about how a couple of these guys that were in the movie were saying that they went on their own time, had to buy their own ticket. They went with like a friend or two to a movie theater to see the thing, and this was the first time they were going to get a chance to see it. Went to the movies, and they said that there was barely anybody in the theater, and it wasn't really getting a reaction from people, and they were just like, "This is so weird." But they felt what they saw, the final product, was kind of a masterpiece. But they were also just they could not understand for the life of them like why this movie wasn't connecting with an audience, why it wasn't more successful, because and everybody attributes to E.T. coming out the exact same weekend. And they also say, how it was so, I don't know, kind of a real anticlimactic experience. They worked so hard on this film, and they thought it was going to be just fantastic, but it just failed to connect with anybody. But the wild thing is, 5 years go by, 10 years go by, and they also, in this same interview with the cast, they talk about now when VHS DVD came out, within 5 or 10 years of this movie, of the thing being out, it eventually found this audience, and it just grew and grew and grew to where it's now one of the most highly acclaimed films of John Carpenter's career. Most people say now that this is the greatest movie he's ever made. And now this movie is like, probably outside of Halloween, probably the most talked about, the most acclaimed movie in John Carpenter's amazing career. And now it's regarded now as a absolute masterpiece. Even by many people as the greatest horror movie ever made. So it's insane, and it just followed this really slow trajectory. And they were talking about how they attributed it to when it got released on DVD, and even at the tail end of VHS. That's after it was in the theater and it went to where people could rent it and see it in their own time. That's when it became this cult phenomenon, and the movie became huge. Like now, it's regarded as one of the most important movies, and you even see the influence of it now. Like it's crazy, it's wild. And they said too, like they even though they were depressed, like some of these actors that saw the movie and that it wasn't connecting at all with the audience. One or two of these guys were saying, "Well, give it 10 years, give it 10 years," and that's exactly what happened. It became this phenomenon. And one of the remarks that they said that I thought was really interesting was 2026 or whatever or what have you. People are still talking about the thing, and it's still getting released. All these reissues. It's in 4K now. It's even been put back in the theater at certain times, throughout the years, and it's made all this money and all of this acclaim now, years and years later. And they were like saying, "Well, is anybody talking about ET anymore?" So yeah, thanks again. Definitely, if you don't have this masterpiece on Blu-ray or 4K, and especially this beautiful edition, and I think this was Shout Factory, the collector's edition, you got to do it. It's essential. Peace.